Good morning, my name is Liz Cooper and I'm the Science Alive Office Coordinator, and I'm going to be demonstrating today how to use paints, how to mix colors, how to properly clean up, and just kind of how to experiment with the materials. So you should have received in your green box some paint sets as well as some brushes. And then before you get started, you should also have a rag or a paper towel or something to dry your brushes and to clean up in case you spill anything. And then you also need just a container with water, paper, glass, or plastic, whatever you have available in your classroom. And then with your kits, you should have a paint palette. If for some reason these aren't available, you can use a paper plate or anything that you're okay getting a little bit of paint on. So first thing I want to talk about is just getting ready. So you should be wearing hopefully something that you're okay getting paint on or getting kind of messy. I'm just kind of shaking these up a little bit. Or if you have available to you an apron or something like that in your classroom, that is also ideal. Most of the paint is washable if you wash it right away, but just in case, you always want to be wearing some clothes that are okay to get messy. So I'm going to talk about kind of mixing colors. So if you have a set of primary colors, so this set, and all the sets might be a little bit different, but this set has the 3 primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. This set also has green, black, and white. So white is a tint, black is a shade, and these are your 3 primary colors, which means these colors can be used to make any other color. So I'm just going to kind of show you a couple quick combinations for colors. So good rule of thumb when you're painting is you always want to rinse and clean your paintbrush before you change colors. So if I'm mixing 2 colors, I don't want to take some of the yellow and then stick it in the blue, because then I'm going to kind of taint the entire thing, which we definitely don't want. So to make the color orange, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of my yellow paint, put it into my palette, okay? And then I'm going to rinse off my brush as well as I can, dry it on my rag or my paper towel, and then I'm going to scoop out just a little bit of red, because red is darker than yellow, and so it's going to kind of take over the color more. And then I'm going to kind of use this to mix them together. And as you can see, that's starting to become an orange. If you start with the darker color, like if I started with red, I would need to add a lot more yellow in order to get it to be orange, and that would kind of be wasteful. So that is how you make orange. So some techniques to use with painting. So one thing to keep in mind is your brush strokes. So keep in mind, whatever you're painting, you want to kind of have the brush strokes going in the same direction. And these paints are water-based. So if you want the paint to go a little bit further, dip your paintbrush in water, and then you can kind of get a little bit more of a watery type color. You want to use not too much water, because it can start to warp your paper. So this is cardstock, which is a little bit stronger than regular paper, but you can see it's still starting to kind of like warp a little bit. So just be thinking about whatever you're painting kind of going in that same direction. And if you're getting this kind of like dry looking brush stroke, then that means you either need to get more paint out or you need to add a little bit of water, okay? So another technique, I'm gonna kind of rinse off my paintbrush, dry it, of color mixing is, say I wanted to make a shade or a tint. So a tint would be a color with white. So if I wanted to make pink, I am going to start with white, okay? So I'm gonna take a little bit of white, put it in my palette, rinse my brush in my cup of water, dry it, and then I'm gonna take a teensy tiny piece of red, okay, and add it to that white to make pink. See, I just had a dot of red and it's already actually kind of a darker pink. So that is something to keep in mind. So pink is technically a tint of red. Okay, so that's our pink. So another kind of fun technique that you can do with painting is kind of use your paintbrush to make kind of a design. And you can kind of smush the brush down and kind of see what kind of dots you can make. So it starts out with a darker color, and then as I go out further, it can get a little bit lighter. This can be a fun way if you were trying to do like little footprints or something like that, or if you were trying to do like snow falling or leaves falling, you can kind of just use your paintbrush and just kind of and see, I only dip my paintbrush in one time and I made all of those marks. So you don't need a ton of paint to do that technique. Okay, so I'm gonna rinse my brush, always rinse, dry. And now let's say I wanted to make navy blue, which would be a shade. So I'm gonna start with blue. Okay, add blue to my palette. Rinse and dry my brush. There you can see, rinse, dry. Then I'm gonna add a teensy tiny bit of black, just that much black, okay? And I'm gonna add it to this blue to make a navy blue. So that's a shade, meaning you added black to it. So another shade would be maroon. So that would be adding black to red. Now I'm going to show you kind of how to do a background with a darker color on top. So I already have this orange background. So let's say I wanted to do maybe like some kind of like a sunset. So I have the orange background, and then I'm going to do this navy blue on top to kind of be the, let's say like the mountain range. Let's say you're painting like something like that. So this can be a nice technique to do if you were gonna have, like, let's say paint the whole background and then do some darker colors on top. So that navy blue shows up pretty well on that orange because it's darker. And again, water-based, I'm gonna get a little bit of water, and then that's gonna help me kind of to add on to these little mountains. And kind of move that paint around a little bit. Obviously, it would be better if I had let my background kind of dry, but for the sake of this demo, I'll show you that. And you can see again, the paper is like warping a little bit, but that is fine. And again, like if I were to do kind of those marks with this blue paintbrush, it's kind of fun just to see how far you can go and still be mark making with only one little dab of paint. It's pretty fun. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that, dry that. Okay, so let's see, one other technique. So something else that you can do is draw and then kind of paint over it. Or you can also draw or kind of like create an image using a brush. So I'm gonna use my smaller paintbrush, and I am going to use, let's see, I'm gonna use my white paint just to kind of show you what that looks like. Okay, and then I'm going to draw, let's see, onto this background. Let's say I'm just gonna draw like, be a little tree. Maybe it's snowed and all the trees are covered in snow, and I want to kind of have that layer over. So you can cover with white to create kind of a cool effect. You could even do white, like let's say again, if it was snowing, you could even do white on top of the mountains there. Okay. You can also like write words and things with paint. It can just be a little bit challenging. So let's see if I'm gonna write D-R-I for the Desert Research Institute. So you can also use your paintbrush to kind of write. So when you are all done painting, you wanna make sure that you take your paintbrushes and you rinse them in your container of water really well. You can also run these under the sink to make sure there's no paint in them, and you want to dry them, and then you want to make sure to close up your paint, especially if you're going to keep working on it, or if you're going to return the paint, you want to make sure that it doesn't dry out. If your paint is dry for any reason, just add water to it and you should be able to reclaim it. Okay, and then you want to take your palette to the sink and rinse it off, like this one. Actually, this does fit in here. And you want to rinse off all of that paint and dry it off so that the next time that you use it, or the next person that uses it, doesn't have the paint still in there. So you should clean it until it's all kind of cleared off. And then you also want to make sure that you place, if you're working on paper, or let's say you're painting on wood, maybe you're painting wooden blocks or a piece of wood, you want to make sure to put it somewhere where someone isn't going to accidentally touch it. So ask your educator if there's a good space for it. Maybe you can put it in your desk. Make sure to always sign your work. So again, you can sign it using your paintbrush. So like, my name is Liz. Maybe you sign it in the bottom. It's also always fun to kind of do the dates. So this is 2023. That can be a little bit more challenging. So always sign your work as well so that you know what is yours. And then it should take maybe 1 day for it to dry, depending. And then you can keep working on it or take it home. So I hope you've enjoyed kind of experimenting with paints, and I hope you enjoy your green box. Thank you.